Welcome to the Thoughtful Advocate podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Teo, and today I'm going to do something different. I've been hearing way too many gruesome horror stories of people committing crimes, killing people, and just not so happy things. So I decided that I want to bring a little light into this world and talk about all the good stuff that's happening so that we don't have to live in this doom and gloom bad news cycle. Join me today on Good News Still Exists. So today we're going to be focusing on 4 critical areas where real progress is being made: the fight against child labor, sustainable fashion breakthroughs, and gun safety. We also have a fun segment about culture, so that's basically anything I'm reading, listening to, or watching, stuff that just makes my heart feel warm. Monkey D. Luffy always says, I'm going to be king of positive news, so grab your straw hat and let's set sail on the grand line of hope. Our first segment focuses on environmental progress, and there's generally some exciting news to share. This progress is so good, it's stretching our expectations. Balloon! The biggest headline comes from the United States energy sector. So in March 2025, renewable energy provided more electricity to the U.S. grid than fossil fuels for the first time ever, and that's huge. I've been waiting for that one. With clean energy providing 51% of U.S.'s electricity that month. And this historic milestone happened despite political headwinds, proving that clean energy transition has its own kind of momentum. Like how Luffy never gives up on his dreams on being Pirate King. Like how Luffy never gives up on his dreams of becoming the Pirate King. And globally, electric vehicles are continuing to be bought over traditional vehicles. Over the first 7 months of 2025, electric vehicle sales were up 27% globally compared to 2024, with China leading at 6.5 million electric vehicles sold and Europe following with 2.3 million. That is a lot of electric vehicles. And these EVs are sailing the road cleaner than clearer than 1,000 sunny sails the seas. The EU reported an 8% decrease in greenhouse gas emissions for 2023, reflecting significant progress in environmental policy and sustainability efforts. So our planet's got that will of D to secure a more sustainable future. So moving on to child labor issues. I'm sure we know all about fast fashion and how a lot of factories still use child labor to make really cheap clothes, and child labor is just happening in a lot of industries, including mining for cobalt, like batteries, and farming. It's found in many industries. While the challenges remain significant, there are increased signs of accountability and legislative action. Senators Cory Booker and Josh Hawley reintroduced bipartisan legislation aiming to hold companies with their federal contracts accountable for child labor in April 2025. This bipartisan approach shows how we can work together despite our political differences. Because when it comes to protecting kids, we're not all in this together. Another thing that's really helping is that shareholders who are investing in these companies are demanding transparency, with proposal submitted to major corporations like Tesla requesting reports on child labor involvement in their supply chains. I think this is a very interesting conversation around transparency and what we know about what these companies are doing when they're producing whatever product they're making. So the more transparent they can be with us, the more trust we can have in them. And I think it's better to address the problems rather than try to hide them. And while the UN has a goal to end child labor worldwide in 2025, progress has still been challenging. That's not to say there hasn't been progress in legislative action. So we are slowly getting, and definitely we're not like back in industrial area where children were working and sweeping chimneys and doing all sorts of dangerous jobs. So thank God for that. But there's still a lot of progress to be made. The fashion industry has long been criticized for its unsustainable practices and unethical production as well. Major brands are trying to make concrete commitments. Even companies like Zara, which is a huge fast fashion company, is launching its own pre-owned platform to encourage repair and resale, which I think is great. We definitely need more of that. And it's definitely a start. They do still have a lot of shady practices, but I think it's definitely a start. Similarly, Ralph Lauren, which a lot of people don't consider fast fashion, because it's more of a high-end brand. They announced that they'll be using 100% sustainably sourced key materials by 2025. These words don't mean a lot sometimes because they're not regulated by the government. So you really have to look into what it means, because sustainably sourced could mean anything at this point. But I think any progress is definitely still progress, that we definitely need to hold these brands accountable. And there are a lot more creative ways that we're using materials to create a fashion in. So there's more items like purses and bags made out of pineapple leather and clothing made out of mushrooms. And I think it just shows how creative designers really can be, and how we can put things that are not normally used to good use. And Brooke would be so proud that we're using products that can actually decompose naturally. Say, yo. Ethical brands like Patagonia and Eileen Fisher are focusing on using sustainable materials, fair labor practices, and transparency. I think they're good examples for the industry, and they've definitely been ahead of their time. The shift towards sustainability isn't just about materials, it's about business models, with resale platforms, rental services, and repair programs gaining mainstream acceptance, because the only company that ever heard that was doing repairs was Patagonia, and now more and more companies are starting to do them. I hope this becomes a standard for every company, because we have a finite amount of resources and we need to use them properly. So gun safety is a huge one. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about Charlie Kirk and what happened to him. And I think it brings up this conversation of gun laws in America and how they need to be reformed. I personally have always been against guns. I just don't think anyone needs them. And it just gives unnecessary power to anyone. And it could be just a random idiot walking down the street carrying a gun. And I think that's so dangerous. So many countries have put tight laws around guns for a specific reason. And if you look at the stats, it shows they have less school shootings and mass shootings in general. But I think gun reform would be a place to start. So in the good news area, several states have strengthened their gun safety laws in 2025. It's called red flag laws, which temporarily allow the removal of firearms from individuals deemed dangerous. This has been implemented and strengthened in multiple states. These laws have bipartisan support from both sides in many communities because they focus on preventing tragedies while respecting due process. Background checks continue to improve, with states closing loopholes that previously allowed private sales without screening. Technology upgrades are also happening to national instant criminal background check systems and have reduced processing times while improving. And as Frankie would say, super. And another important one is safe storage laws are gaining traction at the state level, with requirements for securing gun storage, especially around minors. I'm sure you guys heard the news with minors bringing guns to school because they're not properly locked up. So this is definitely a start. While federal progress remains challenging, school initiatives are creating a patchwork of stronger protections that collectively represent significant advancement in gun safety measures. So this is Culture Corner, and I got this as a gift from my husband's little brother, and I think that's so cute. It's Chopper, and yeah, he's my son. Anyways, so now for something like a little different. This is basically a segment about my favorite movies recently or books I've been reading. I just want to share them online because I think it's just nice to share hobbies and things that you've been doing that really light you up or make you think. So here we go. So first, let's talk about a movie I saw recently called Nonnas. This film has captured many hearts, and I think it even won an award. The premise is basically, what if we hired a bunch of grandmothers to cook for the community? This dude's mom passed away. She had so many great Italian recipes that were authentic, and he remembered her making pasta and all these delicious dishes. And the grandmas and people in his community, he saw that they each knew the key staple recipe, so he thought, why not bring together and open a restaurant? I think that's such a great idea. Apparently, this is based on a true story. There's a real restaurant on Staten Island that actually hires Nonna's grandmothers to cook and run this restaurant, and I think that's great. I don't necessarily think that all grandparents need to work if they don't want to, especially at the age. I don't think we need to work until we die. But if they want to work maybe that gives them a sense of purpose and gives them community, then by all means, why not? And I feel like through this movie, I saw how a lot of these grandmothers were isolated from the world. They were staying at home and not really doing anything and not really connecting to anybody. And isolation can be truly dangerous. When they came together, even though there was quite a bit of drama, they became really close friends, and it just gives them a community, because when you're older, you see a lot of loss in your life, whether you're losing friends, that age where your friends are passing away due to age, and it could be family members as well. With so much loss, really need to find that strong community again. So I feel like this gave them a chance to find that community. I think it speaks to the universal truth that the best meals aren't just about the nutritional value, they're about the connection, how much love is put into the food, and the passion for the cooking, and the recipe passed down from generation to generation, which I think is sometimes lost. I think this movie is really heartwarming for me. Growing up, my grandma cooked the best meals. She would make so many amazing dishes, like curry puffs from scratch. The dough, especially, would take hours, basically the whole morning, whole day. But it would be absolutely delicious, and you can just see how she loves to cook for people, because that's just how they show their love, and it makes her happy when you eat it. And I love eating her food. And it also makes me sad because when she's gone, no one else really has these recipes. So no, I'm not going to open a restaurant, because honestly, I'm not that great of a cook. I can cook meals to get by. My culinary expertise is not there, even though I love food and watching like cooking shows. I just am not passionate about cooking in that way. But I do love my grandma and her recipes. So I wrote down as many as I could. And even till this day, she tells me her recipes and stuff. So I'll definitely try and carry on recipes I can. But I think with these times, a lot of people are trying to cut down on how much prep time goes into their meals. So it can be very hard to make traditional meals, because we are losing that. But I think this film celebrates that we can still find traditional meals through the care and love of grandmas. And I think it also makes you slow down and think, because in this world, we all just want fast food. That's becoming more popular, but it's not really slowing down and remembering traditions and how we used to prepare food. I thought it was really wholesome. I cried, and there were so many heartwarming stories they shared about them and their grandchildren. One I relate to most is one of the Nonnas. Her kids don't talk to her anymore, and she had 4 children. I found that really heartbreaking, because I don't really talk to my dad either, for good reason, if you've seen my other videos. But in short, just called me PTSD. But of course, I hope that everyone could be friendly and cordial. It's nice to see families that are still together. Who doesn't want a lovely family? I think Sanji would really love this movie. Definitely give Nonnas a watch if you love cooking and grandmothers. I enjoyed it. And yeah, on the literary side. So I count fan fiction as books. They're free. They're online. Nothing gets better than that. I've been reading All the Undudes, the Harry Potter fan fiction about Remus. If you remember, he was the professor against the dark arts, and he was a werewolf. I think he's a very interesting character in general. It also follows the story of the Marauders, which, if you remember, the Marauders map in Harry Potter, where it basically shows you the whole map of Hogwarts and lays out every student or every person walking in Hogwarts. And so that map was made by Mooney, Remus, Foot, Sirius Black, Prongs, James Potter, Harry Potter's dad, and Wormtail, which is Peter. And yeah, this fan fiction, I do have to warn, does have a bit of, I don't really know these categories, but basically it does talk about sex, and yeah, it does go into detail a bit, but not as much as if you were to read a fully erotica literary novel. It just touches on it. You can skip it. It's probably like a paragraph, and it doesn't start until you get further in the book, which I appreciate. And yeah, I just really enjoyed reading this book, because it was just so much fun to see the Marauders, because you keep hearing about it in the Harry Potter films. I never read the Harry Potter books, which is embarrassing. I probably read the first one, but not much of it. I just always was a movie watcher, so I enjoyed watching them. And really, if I'm watching a movie, I don't tend to read the story, because it's like, I already know what happens. I think this fanfiction is very touching, because it explores the complexity of family, especially with Sirius Black. The Black family is they're purebloods, and if you don't know, in Harry Potter world, purebloods are families that are fully magical. They call humans with no magic powers muggles. It's this hierarchy of wanting magical people and beings to reproduce. The Black family is known for incest, to keep that pure blood within their family, and it's seen as this like honor, basically that you're better than everyone else, which I don't agree with. That Sirius, who is someone is like the black sheep of the family, he doesn't want a part. He doesn't want any part in his family's evilness and them siding with the Dark Lord and doing all these terrible things like unforgivable curses on their own family members, their own children. I think that's horrible. Of course, a lot of abuse, physical and verbally. Yeah, it's pretty rough. And because I grew up through a traumatic childhood, I could actually relate to some of what Sirius went through. Obviously, not to that extent, but I think it gave me a lot to relate to. Even though your family is like this, it doesn't mean you have to be, and you can be different. You can turn the tide and break that generational curse. So just like Sirius, I'm also a generational curse breaker. And it's really hard. You can do it, and it's worth it. One of my favorite parts of all the young dudes, oh yeah, there are a lot of LGBTQ relationships in this. Like Sirius and Remus are in a relationship, which I can definitely see because I feel like in The Prisoner of Azkaban, like, feel some spark between them. I enjoyed their relationship. I thought it was cute because Sirius would do so much for Remus and vice versa, and I really enjoyed their relationship. There's also lesbian relationships, hetero relationships, and so on. I thought it was a nice story. One moving story for me was Remus and so the part where I cried basically was Remus's relationship with his mother, and the storyline basically shows how family separation can happen. And for this story, when Remus was a kid, he got bit by a werewolf and he turned into a werewolf, and his father committed because he got bit and he was very against werewolves. His father died, and it was just the mom and Remus. Remus was just a child, but every full moon, he would turn. It would be so painful for her to watch. He would become very aggressive. And the mom didn't know what to do, so she sent him to boarding school. That honestly, it seemed that for like werewolves and stuff, but not all of them were werewolves, which confused me. So just like a reform school, and they were locked up in these cells. When they turned, it would drive the werewolf inside them crazy, and they would hurt themselves, and yeah, pretty bloody. But anyways, eventually, Remus gets in touch with his mother again when he's a lot older. And I think obviously that was an empty part of his life, not knowing his mother growing up. And so heartbreaking because I have a son, and to think that I would miss such a huge chunk of my child's life is just, it really hurt me. To read their dialogue and how they interact, she kept mentioning that she was never ashamed of him because he was a werewolf and he was a wizard. And I think was really heartwarming, and it was nice because he probably, like in the story, he felt abandoned by his family and everyone else. So for him to connect with his mother again was really heartwarming. And yeah, really enjoyed this Netflix. It's pretty dark, but I would say pretty sad. It's not like a bad ending or anything. I read everything probably within a week, and it's really addicting. I love how the Marauders are so close and would do anything for each other. Yeah, it's so heartwarming to see friendships because growing up, I didn't really have a lot of family support. And so I relate to that a lot because my friends were there for me and I was there for them. I found that really heartwarming, and I could just relate to a lot of what was going on, like wanting to be in school rather than at home because home is so hectic and you feel so much safer at school with the professors and their friends. And I just love like Harry Potter in general. So yeah, it's fun. So yeah, both the examples, whether it's about grandmothers sharing their cooking wisdom or writers exploring complex family relationships, I think it reminds us of the power of stories and connection, and the power of good storytelling and how it brings people together. And I think it helps us see the world through more of a rose-colored glass, because even though we can be quite different from other people, there's still so many things that make us human, and I love that connection. And before we close, I wanted to share a couple more stories about real life things that are so heartwarming. I was on TikTok and I saw in Japan they have this restaurant run by people with Alzheimer's, and generally they are older. I think that's so nice. Again, to give the elderly a chance to reintroduce themselves into society, because it can get so lonely when you're at that age. And basically, when you go into a restaurant, you might order one thing, you might get something, and you might get something else because they might not remember your order. I think that's the fun of it. So I think that's very sweet. There's so many communities that I think is very heartwarming. Yeah. My husband's friend had a daughter with dwarfism, and he never experienced or seen anyone else with dwarfism, not even in his family. So they've done so much research, and every year they give back. They run community events to raise money for dwarfism awareness, and they talk to businesses and advocate, for example, at the movie theater for higher seats for people with dwarfism so they can see the screen better. I think that's so heartwarming. Even though it can be given harder circumstances, you can still come up on top and turn it into a lesson and give back and do good with it. I think that's so sweet. And if you guys know about the little free library, it's basically a lot of people putting these boxes in front of their houses and giving books away for free, like books they don't want to read anymore. You can go in and trade a book like a book block. And I think that's super cute. And people have been telling the CEO, Daniel Gumnett, that they've met more neighbors in 1 week than they've ever had before putting up their library. I think that's so nice that something as simple as sharing books can bring community together. And this was the same with community fridges, clothing swaps, and neighborhood resource sharing. It just truly brings the neighborhood together. Sometimes we borrow things from our neighbors and try to give it back with snacks and stuff. I think it just makes the world seem better. And yeah, I think if we all can be friends with each other, that's just what makes the world go round. Especially in this digital age where I feel like we're all so isolated, we definitely need human connection. And after all, the real treasure, or the one piece, is just the friends we made along the way. As we're wrapping up today's episode of the Thoughtful Advocate podcast, clear that progress is being made across critical areas, from renewable energy milestones to corporate accountability, sustainable innovation to community safety measures. Positive change is happening with a combination of policy, technology, consumer pressure, and grassroots action. We're definitely closer to our dreams than ever before. I think these should really highlight that collective action. Luffy has always said that his dream is freedom. And for me, I think that freedom includes to live in this world with clean air, fair labor, sustainable fashion, and safe communities, and just love, because in the end, we all want to be loved. And I think that's so, and yet in the end, we're all part of the same crew. We're all part of this world. We buy better lives for each other, for ourselves and our families. So might as well work together and remember that we're in it together. Okay, so today's sponsor is Kind Laundry. Just kidding, they're not really a sponsor, but I do have an affiliate code. Kind Laundry use natural ingredients, and it actually comes in these sheets. So much more useful than liquid laundry detergent, because that stuff gets messy. With Kind Laundry, you can bring this anywhere. It's literally in a box, pack in your suitcase, and it's that easy. You can get 10% off by using code ZeroWasteCute.